Hi, welcome back to Let's Talk About It. If it's your first time here, my name's Lee. This channel covers geopolitics, global affairs. It has a China bias, although right now we're talking a lot about the Russia-Ukraine conflict and actually how it involves China. If you do like this kind of content on the channel, consider subscribing, but please only subscribe if you're really interested in the channel, else otherwise it does harm the algorithm. So what I want to talk about today is the meeting between Jake Sullivan of the US and Jiechi of China. And they met in Rome, and that meeting was on, I think, the 14th of March. Now, before this meeting, there was a number of reports, primarily in the press of the US, that Russia had asked China for military assistance. Now, both China and Russia both denied that, and it does seem kind of strange, as that I think Russia are probably the second largest manufacturer of military equipment in the world, and I think China are some way down at 5th or 6th position. So I find it very strange that Russia would be requesting military equipment assistance from China anyway. And I think, however, this was done to try and sort of unbalance China before the meeting. The US have often done this before, where they will impose some sort of sanctions or make some sort of statement before there's one of these high-level meetings between themselves and China. So, from what I understand, it was a very intense meeting that lasted around 7 hours, and it's quite clear from the readouts from the two countries that it didn't quite go the way the US was expecting. I think the US went there wanting to kind of talk just about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and I think that they wanted to try and persuade China to get them on side. Interestingly, the US and the US media keep trying to say that the whole world is against Russia. Well, that's not strictly true, because if we go back to the UN resolution where this was voted on, India abstained, the United Arab Emirates abstained, and also China abstained, and a huge amount of the African countries also abstained. Now, just there's probably 3.5–4 billion people's representation, and that's significantly more than the few countries that voted in favour of that resolution, which was primarily the EU, the USA, Canada, Japan. So when the USA says the world is supporting these sanctions, that is not actually technically true. Anyway, I'm going to read you a little bit from the readout that the Chinese side have given. As I said, the readout from America was very, very short. It was just 80 words. Actually, I will also link to all these documents I'm referring to in the description of the video. But the US readout, being very, very short, suggests that the meeting didn't go as the US intended. Anyway, on to the Chinese readout. Now, I'm just going to pick a couple of bits out of that that I think are relevant. So, firstly, the two sides had candid, in-depth and constructive talks on China-US relations and international and regional issues of mutual interest and concern, and agreed to follow through on the consensus reached by the heads of state, the two countries, to enhance mutual understanding, manage differences, expand common ground and strengthen cooperation, and to accumulate enabling conditions for China-US relations to return to the right track of sound and steady development. Now, what they're talking about here is, if you remember, a few months ago, Biden and Xi had a video conference where they agreed certain things, and China feel that the US is not carrying through what was agreed in that meeting. And then Yang Jiechi noted that implementing the consensus reached by the two heads of state is the most important task in China-US relations. He then went on to say that the Taiwan question bears on China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. In the three China-US joint communiques, the US clearly acknowledges that there is but one China. The one China principle is the prerequisite for the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and the US and constitutes the political foundation of China-US relations. The current US administration has made a commitment on the Taiwan question to adhering to the one China policy and not supporting Taiwan independence, but its recent actions are obviously not consistent with its statements. So what they're talking about here is that China are saying that they support the one China policy, and that's what they've agreed to, and that's what they say in their sort of official communiques. However, their actions and sort of more, let's say, casual words, it appears that they don't support that one China policy. And if you look at some, I made a video about this, but a tweet Mike Pompeo made when he was in Taiwan recently. Now, although he was apparently not part of a official US delegation in Taiwan, he's seen as a very high profile person within the US, and there's a potential he may run for the presidency in 2024. So it's important, that his words are taken notice of, really. And then he went on to say China's solemn position on issues related to Xinjiang, Tibet and Hong Kong. He pointed out that these issues involve China's core interests and are China's internal affairs that allow no interference from external forces. Again, this refers to all the negative press and accusations the US keep making against China with regards to Xinjiang. They suggest there's a genocide there, they suggest forced labour. China is saying, look, this area is nothing to do with you, it's China's internal affairs, keep your nose out. And then the two sides, it goes on to finish, the two sides also exchanged views on international and regional issues, including the Ukraine issue, the nuclear issue on the Korean Peninsula, the Iranian nuclear issue and the Afghan issue. Now, that sort of closing paragraph says to you that China don't give the Ukraine-Russia crisis any priority over other issues they see on the international stage. And I think that, although the readouts are what they are, I think the Global Times had a very interesting article. And again, I just want to refer to that to read you a few paragraphs. The Global Times is published in English, and it's a newspaper that is very close to the Communist Party of China. And the headline of that article was, China criticizes US inconsistency on Taiwan question at Yang Sullivan meeting as US fails to impose its Ukraine stand. So this article says, although some US media described the 7-hour meeting as intense, covering a wide range of issues, including the Ukraine situation and China-US ties, the White House summarised the meeting in an 80-word readout. And this is what I said earlier. It suggests that the meeting didn't go the way the US were hoping. He then goes on to say, there are still major divergences between the two sides, particularly on their positions concerning the Ukraine crisis. Now, I think the US were hoping to come to this meeting and try and persuade China to change its stance on Russia regarding the Ukraine crisis. But it's fairly obvious that China is sticking to its stance, and really were not so interested in talking about that. They were more interested in talking about US-China bilateral relations. And the article in Global Times goes on to say, senior Chinese diplomat says President Xi Jinping had promised mutual respect, peaceful coexistence and win-win cooperation as the three principles in developing China-US relations in the new era, which has charted the course for the development of the bilateral ties. Again, China often look for this, what they call a win-win scenario. And then it continues, given the readout from the White House, we can see that the US only cares about the core issues of its concern, but China paid much attention on China's core interests. There is a major divergence in that the US hopes China to solve the Ukraine crisis. Li Heidong, a professor from the Institute of International Relations of China Foreign Affairs University, told the Global Times on Tuesday. He also noted that forcing Beijing to accept the US stance during the talks reflects unhealthy mindset of Washington. And a senior US official was quoted in a Reuters report on Monday saying, "We have deep concerns about China's alignment with Russia at this time." And the National Security Advisor was direct about those concerns and the potential implications and consequences of certain actions. This is the US trying to say that if China don't fall in line with what the US wants them to over the Russia-Ukraine crisis, i.e. taking the US's side on this, taking the US's stance on this, that the US are potentially going to impose sanctions against China. It then goes on to say all parties should exercise maximum restraint, protect civilians and prevent a large-scale humanitarian crisis, adding that China had provided emergency humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and will carry on its efforts to this end. He also stressed that China firmly opposes any words and deeds that spread false information, distort and smear China's position. He's obviously referring here to the stuff that appeared in the US press, again from unnamed sources, that was suggesting China was offering military help to Russia, or Russia had asked China for military help. Both sides, as I said earlier, have completely denied those accusations. And then just to finish, although the Ukraine issue was a priority for the US during Tuesday's meeting to pressurize China to take a stand, it's seen that the attempt has been unsuccessful. Wu Xinbao, Dean of the Institute of International Studies at Fudan University, told Global Times on Tuesday. Not only did China's position remain unchanged, but it also refuted rumours and false information that the US had been spreading. It means that the goal of the US for this meeting has failed, Wu said. So, yeah, this is sort of exactly my thinking. I think China are very steadfast on their position on Ukraine and Russia, and there is no way they're going to bow to US pressure. They see US as a bully, and I think they are taking their own position and their own views on the situation. Anyway, that does bring me to the end of this one. It is a bit of a longer one than usual, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's given you a little bit more insight and understanding of China's position on Ukraine-Russia crisis. And say if you do like the video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps us get out there. And if you do like the channel, are interested in this kind of content and want to see more, then please consider subscribing to the channel. However, as always, for now, take care.